I want to thank you for listening today to Community Heroes. I just want to take a moment to remind everyone what our mission statement is, which is to mentor the community at large, transform, educate, and mentor the individuals in our community, and lastly, to create an all-inclusive society. So today, I have the privilege of interviewing someone I am lucky enough to call a friend. I've been watching this young man progress, and I'm very proud of him. Every time I get to talk to him, I tell him I'm always amazed at what he's done. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to introduce Mr. Corey Harris.
Hey, Tyrone. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's been a long time coming. Definitely, honored for the opportunity to share my story. You don't realize how long it's been until you look back. It's been like, over 10 years since I've known you, and you kind of, we've seen each other grow. And a lot of what I'm doing now, I work in tech. I do tech sales, work for a major tech company. Was originally born in New York, but in the 80s, due to it being so, in the late 80s, being it was just so bad to grow up there. My mother didn't want me to grow up there. So we ended up moving down south when I was 1 year old, and grew up in Goldsboro, North Carolina from I would say probably about the age of 4, and basically lived there for the better part of my life, all the way up until I'd say about 27. Obviously went to college, UNC Chapel Hill, majored in economics, and met Tyrone at Wayne Community College, where I actually learned and really started kind of building who I am today there, and then transferred to UNC. But happy to go more in depth, and definitely one of my things, my major tenets is to, a lot of people look at me as if I made it, for whatever that means, but for people who feel like I made it, I can go back and pass on the knowledge that's helped me go this far. So happy to be here.
Yeah. Now, like you said, you gave a quick breakdown of some of the things you've done, but I always like to say, when you come from a town like Goldsboro, for those who are listening and are unaware about Goldsboro, being from a small town like Goldsboro, sometimes it's tough to get out, because, everyone tends to know everyone. So sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and depending on the area, and sometimes it's a lot of negativity. And, just from a statistics standpoint, Goldsboro has a lot of, negativity depending on the neighborhood you're in. And, for one, from your take, how were you able to, avoid a lot of the naysayers and, like you said, go on to go to school like UNC and ultimately follow a lot of your dreams from what I've seen?
Yeah, so it was a couple of things at play for me. The fact that I was originally from New York, and going to New York wasn't really far-fetched to me. My mother pretty much grew up there, and then my later brother, he spent his first couple years of life there too, up to the point he was about, I want to say 7 or 8. And so I always kind of had a context outside of Goldsboro. Like Goldsboro just wasn't necessarily just my world. And then so that to give you more context there, about how I kind of view things. I already had kind of like saw the world bigger than Goldsboro. My mother, when in '96, she got me my first computer, me and my brother, and I think that was like the most important thing that happened to my life that got me into tech. And like I said, hindsight looking back, that's when I first joined tech and stuff like that. But I didn't realize it back then. And this is back when compact computers were very popular. Napster had become very popular. So I started burning CDs. And one of the things that I would actually do, like I said, hindsight's always 20/20. But when I was selling CDs, I learned about product placement. I learned about accounting, marginal rate of substitution. And I didn't really learn this stuff in a book, but I would see people in my neighborhood and, they would sell weed or whatever. So one of the things I did was I used the same pricing model as they would for their weed for my CD. So common thing back then was, hey, I'll give you 3 nickel bags of weed for $10. And I would say literally the same thing with my CDs. Hey, I'll give you 3 CDs for $10. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew that I wanted to keep it simple. And mind you, I'm probably around like 11, 12 years old in middle school. So I ended up starting my first bank account with the money I made from CDs. And at certain points, I was making more money from selling CDs than I was actually working at fast food restaurants. But when I was growing up in Goldsboro has somewhat been always rough, but back when I was growing up, it wasn't as much gun violence and gunplay. It was more people fighting, and it wasn't the gangs hadn't infiltrated as much. It was still kind of evolved around like drug culture, drug dealers and stuff like that. So it wasn't, the violence tended to be more controlled. I would say now the violence tends to be more sporadic, as the kids out there now who are running the streets and this is just my standpoint, they're not necessarily doing it to survive. They're doing it to look cool. Not to say that didn't happen when I was growing up. But yeah, so that a lot of that happened. And then, I have relatives who run the streets. I actually have a cousin. We used to be, right hand, left hand. We were always together. And, he's in federal prison, and, I'm here in Cali, following my dream. But in my family, I have so many different types of people. Like I come from a family of a lot of lawyers, nurses, medical doctors. And then, growing up in Goldsboro, I saw people from the street. So I was always somewhat exposed to both sides of the coin of life. But just kind of figured out through life what I needed to do. And, things happened early in my life where I realized the street life wasn't for me. Really, really early when I was a teenager. And, luckily I was able to figure all that out. Because, when you're an adult, things stick with you longer. When you're a teenager, people somewhat tend to give you a slap on the wrist somewhat, but that kind of also boils down to race too, if you ask me. Like, I think black teens are more prepared for the prison industrial complex than a Caucasian or Asian or even an Indian teen. When you look at most of the prison population is black, so I have my views there, but yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely, again, we agree on so many things, and just on that aspect, I feel like I want to put my 2 cents on that. Like you said, a lot of institutionalizations are filled with young black males, and a lot of times it starts out with just their neighborhood that they brought up in, and the only difference is there's no bars there, but they're all colored, coded, a lot of times gray, they're off from main society. There's so many things, so whenever they make the transition from what they would call their home to in the federal institution, it's almost like they really haven't changed. They've been locked up so long already. And it's a lot of times just a mental disenfranchisement type of thing, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Exactly. Like it definitely boils down to race and like socioeconomic status. I majored in economics, so I think everything is about allocation of resources, and the easiest way to divide up resources in regards to people is along race. Since you don't look like me, then you're not going to get this. And that's basically what you see in Western culture, with slavery. That's how they were able to keep black people down. Like, your skin color is black, you're 1/6 of a man. So, we can talk a lot about that, but, I'm following your lead on this.
Yeah. And like I said, maybe there might be a part 2 for another podcast. I get some people to chime in maybe on the poll. That it would definitely worth talking about. But I do want to, kind of talk about, you went to UNC, and, UNC is considered a prestigious school. And a lot of times, when you come from low economic backgrounds, when you hear about schools like UNC, Harvard, Duke, some of the the prestige schools like that, it almost makes it feel like
it's downstairs.
It's almost like
go ahead.
It's almost like trying to reach for a cloud in the sky sometimes, because you don't see too many people in your circle that made it to a school like that. And I was wondering, just what was your motivation to, try to get into it? I'm pretty sure UNC wasn't the only school you applied to that was on that level.
So funny thing is, I've had a love-hate relationship with Michael Jordan. So, again, I always identified myself as a New Yorker. I had, the New York identity. I was just in Goldsboro. So the New York Knicks was always my main fan. And Jordan would always beat New York. And one of the things that, Jordan was like Kobe in that. And if he was playing your opposing team, you still love to watch him. And, Michael Jordan actually was born in Brooklyn, but he grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina. So, being a basketball fan, I knew that he went to UNC. And Goldsboro, or the people that I knew, was primarily, we were all UNC fans. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to go there. And then I later found out that they had one of the top business schools in the state, if not the country. So I'm like, great, I want to do business. I should definitely go to UNC. That's the main thing I wanted to go. And I actually only applied to 2 universities. I applied to ECU and I applied to UNC Chapel Hill.
Okay.
And so I had my head on knowing where I wanted to go. But I just knew, that's the reason why I chose to go to UNC. And one of the things that's helped me is to work backwards, right? So let's say your goal is to say, you know what, I want to get out of debt in 5 years and I owe, $30,000 in student loans. What do you need to start doing today to actually make that happen, right? So my last year at Wayne, before my third year at Wayne Community College started, I had already made up my mind, I'm going to UNC. This is what I'm doing. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to go to UNC, I need to make it more definite that I can get in there, because from the research that I had done and the conversation that I had with people, it wasn't necessarily about you having the highest GPA. It was more around you being a well-rounded person, right? So they're not just looking for bookworms. They're looking for people who are going to change the world. Who are socially conscious, who are obviously academically, gifted, who volunteer. And that's where me and you met, Tyrone, just through a lot of my work with 3MG and them helping me along my way and stuff like that. Definitely got to give a big shout out to 3MG and Mr. Burrell and Mr. McNair. Very integral in me getting here. But so that's how my thought process went. And I said, well, I've done a lot of volunteering, but I need something that's icing on the cake. So then that's when I decided to run for SGA president. And people thought I was crazy, and I didn't even know if the person who ran before me was going to run again, but I really didn't care. I just knew what I wanted, and I didn't want to compromise on that. And I think that's the really big key to following your dream. A lot of times it's just because what you see in front of you oftentimes isn't really there. You know what I'm saying? If I just thought about it from the angle of hey, I'm from Goldsboro, how can I get to UNC? It's not going to happen. It wouldn't have happened. But I was just I was very persistent about getting there. And then the interesting thing that happened again, I had relatives who had gone to college. I didn't necessarily have tight relationships with them, but hearing those stories about I got an older cousin and dad got accepted to 20 different Ivy League schools, right? So hearing her story kind of impart on me shit, I can do it too. I got somebody in my family who's done it, and I think we're all great and we're all connected to people who's great. We just got to hear our own stories to show us that we can replicate and do the same thing. An interesting thing is before I went to UNC, right after I got accepted, I ended up meeting 2 older cousins who went to UNC, and I was actually the third one in the family to go to UNC. So you can just kind of imagine how more that emboldened me. I got into UNC, and then I found out I'm actually the third one. I'm like, cool. So when I go there, I already have a little baked-in network of people I can talk to. And there was times when I was like stressed in college where I would just ride over to my cousin's house who lived in Durham, and I would go talk to him. So obviously it was me that got into UNC, but it was more around the people around me that helped me, because you can do some good stuff on your own, but you're not going to be great unless you have the community of people around you who are guiding you. And because you can't see your own blind spots. But yeah, that's how I ended up at UNC.
Okay, man. That story right there alone is worth the interview. and I mean, you said so many great things that is definitely so true. This is probably the last question that I want to ask you now. You stayed here for a while, but you've been in San Francisco, what is it, 3 years now?
I've been here 4 years. This actually be my 5th year.
Okay, yeah. So I know it's been a minute, and I just wanted to just ask, again, that's way across state. So just what was your motivation for taking that journey out there to San Francisco? Yeah,
so I had so when I first kind of was like, yeah, I'm a techie now, I'm a tech entrepreneur. It wasn't until I went to UNC and I met a guy who I'm still friends with to today, and actually he's one of my roommates. Shout out to Zad. But I started my first tech company with him, and he kind of like showed me the ropes and stuff. And he would, and this is where I learned where our people aren't less smarter, or there's no set of people who are less smarter than other people. It's more about who has access to resources. And he would tell me stories about how he would print out papers on an inkjet printer in the early 90s, like 92, 94, and I didn't see inkjet printer until like the early 2000s or late 99, 98. So he was kind of born to access. Like, he had uncles who had started tech companies. He had his dad as a doctor and stuff, and he would tell me all this stuff about how he knew a guy who was raising money for his startup, and how he met his investor on a plane ride, and after the plane ride, the investor wrote him $1 million check. Coming from Goldsboro, we don't hear that. Most of the people who were getting money back home were dope boys. They had their money in brown paper bags, but, that's telling me these stories about people cutting you a check and stuff like that. I'm like, wow, in the beginning, I didn't believe it because it was out of context of my purview of life at that time. But so I started my first tech company with him, and it went well. It was a good learning experience. And anybody who works in tech is like, if you're not in the Bay or the Valley, you want to be here. All other things around the world are pretty much trying to mimic what they do here. And I didn't want to just stay in North Carolina from that point. I always aspired to come here. I just kind of felt like it wouldn't happen at certain points, but, it did. But it's just like in the 80s, where if you wanted to work in finance or if you wanted to do consulting, you went to New York, to work for Bain Capital, Goldman Sachs. It's the same thing, That was pretty much the reason why I wanted to come to the Bay. It was only right, It's like, yeah, a lot of people kind of said I shouldn't do it. Cost of living is crazy out here. But I knew with the way my career was going in Durham and in the Triangle, because there's still a lot of racism there. Durham, if you look at it, 40% black. But when you look at most of the startups on Main Street or in Durham, they're not black. And being that the cost of living is lower there, I feel like it's easier to be more set in your ways and still make a living. Out here in the West Coast and in the Bay, it's expensive to live, and there's racism here, there's racism everywhere. But out here, it's less of a deterrent, I feel like, of you getting where you want to go. Like, yeah, I have conversations with people who work in diversity and inclusion and stuff like that. It's still an issue, but I just feel like it's less of an issue here. And the beauty about being out here, I've been out here for 4 years. And then now if I was to go back home to do my thing, it would be a way more easier. Sad to say, people appreciate you when you're gone, and other people appreciate you. That's when your people back home appreciate you more. But simple fact of life. But yeah, that was pretty much my rationale behind wanting to go to live in the Bay. It's like, I had to follow my dreams. So.
Okay, well, Yeah, man, you did it. Before I let you go, was there any, anything that you wanted to share for us, just on the stuff that you've done since you've been out there or anything like that?
Yeah, I say the biggest thing for people to kind of like what I tell people all the time is like my main two things that have helped me is like personal branding, understanding what you want people to think of you when they think of you, and then also too networking. Like the current job that I have, I wouldn't have got it if I had the network. And actually, I interviewed my friend Shamika for my event that I used to host called Tech Trap House. And when I was on the job market, I called her and said, hey, hey sis, I need a job. Is Twilio hiring? She's like, yeah. And the beauty of, most companies hire through referrals. Most companies in tech, outside tech, they look at applications that come through. But if you're trying to work at one of these large companies, everybody's trying to work there. Like, how are you going to differentiate yourself? And one of those ways is through networking. But then also, too, building a personal brand. So I had started, the first company I started in college, we actually used the company that I work for now, Twilio Technology. So when I was actually in the interview, I was actually instantly able to win them over because I built an app on top of their platform. And in my role, I basically sell companies and help them think about use cases about technology and how to best implement them, right? So, and I had already had that personal brand of, being an entrepreneur, being in tech for a while, doing all this stuff. So when you're kind of going out and aspiring to do these things, it's always good to do them beforehand. Like what I tell people, if you want to be a nurse, like start acting like a nurse today. Like, what does a nurse do? Right? If you want to start a YouTube channel or a podcast, look at other YouTube people or even people who've done interviews like, Oprah or, Darren King and stuff like that. Mimic what those experts are doing in the field you want to do. So when the opportunity comes up, it's not you saying, hey, can you give me a job? No, it's like, this is what I do. This is what I want. What's up? So I would say acting as if you've already done it or doing it is very critical, right? Because if I had to choose, I'm working on starting a podcast myself and a YouTube channel, right? So if I had to choose between two videographers and I was talking to a videographer that can show me his work and say, this is why I shot the angle from this angle versus someone else is saying, oh, I'm trying to get in videography, would you want to work with me? I'm probably going to choose the person who already has a portfolio, who's telling me detailed stuff about why they shot things from certain angles. I'm probably going to go with them because I feel like they've already done it. And, as much as companies and people say they want to help people come up or help find the next one, they do to a certain extent that they feel like you don't need them, right? Like, a lot of the people that I love working with is like, wow, like, they're good at what they're doing, but I feel like me and them could be great, right? Like, so those are like some things I would tell people, and obviously study your craft or whatever that is, become an expert in it and be helpful for advice.
Yeah, that was true. Like I said, whatever it is that you're trying to shoot for, like I said, go ahead and start preparing for the day that you get that opportunity. That's the best advice I think anyone could get that has a big dream. So, again, man, Corbin, I appreciate it, man. Now, I'm always following you, always praying for the best for you for whatever you do. And maybe later on down the line, I'm pretty sure I have to interview you again because you do some more great stuff and everything. But like that, thanks for giving me a few moments to ask some questions.
Oh yeah, this definitely ain't gonna be the last time. You, like I said, you're good peoples, and I've been following you since I've been at Wayne. So, and kudos to you for putting this together. And I know a lot of people who make excuses, and I forgot where I heard this from, where you could take somebody's problems. If everybody went to a room and everybody put all their problems on the table, would you keep yours? Or would you take somebody else's? And, you haven't been dealt the best hand of life, but you making what to do with it. You're not making excuses. You got a kid, you married. you doing this podcast. So, you know, I really respect that about you. You know what I'm saying? Like you could have your life, you know, the cards you were dealt in life, you haven't used them to define you. You're defining how you want your life to be. And I really, you know, I've always really respected that about you. Like, you know, no excuses. I know people who have hella privilege and so many things going their way, and they still make excuses of why they can't get to where they are, or they have what I call this victim mindset, and you're the complete opposite of it, man. You know, everybody calling it mama mentality. I think you got that mama mentality or whatever. You know, just from knowing you and seeing you, you know, I really commend you on that. So, you know, as much as you showing me respect, you deserve it more, man, because, you know, your life hasn't been easy. You're not making excuses, so.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it, man. So, again, with that, you know, thanks everyone for listening. It's Community Heroes, like I said, information will be in the YouTube description. You know, follow us on Facebook, follow us on our website, communityheroes.net, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, and you can follow me on Facebook, online, Instagram, Corey Blinks. And my favorite phrase is stay trapping. So, you know, keep being positive and stay trapping.
That's right. Stay trapping, everyone. Thanks.